Welcome, everyone, to the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, Justin Miller. As always, happy to have you guys back after a wonderful holiday break. Hope you had a great one. We did here at our place, saw a lot of our family, ate too much food, and watched so much great sports. So we'll have it all to break down here on today's show. We have Drake in the FCS playoffs to break down. We have Drake in the Emerald Coast Classic to break down, as well as just some few thoughts on college basketball from a nationwide scope, because man, watched a lot of great teams perform during this feast week. And I want to give you guys kind of my top three teams that impressed me throughout this holiday break. But before we get to any of that in our show today, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, all that good stuff all over on any social media page at Media Row Pod, as well as wherever you are viewing or listening to this podcast with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So make sure you're giving us a like and subscribe on there as well. We are very thankful for everyone tuning in, as well as our sponsor in Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Make sure to check them out and use that keyword in Woodley, and your first drink is on the house. So let's jump right into it, because we have a lot to get to. We watched a lot of sports over Thanksgiving break, and none was bigger than Saturday's noon kickoff between the Drake Bulldogs and the 11th seed South Dakota Coyotes. The Bulldogs fall in the FCS playoffs. They make it back their second consecutive year in the FCS playoffs, but once again come up short as they fall to the 11th seed Coyotes 38-17 in the first round. That finishes Coach Woodley's first year with Drake, and it was a very successful first year. 8-4 under Coach Woodley, while on the other side of the field, you have South Dakota advancing to play Mercer. And we're going to break down this game in a weird way. We're going to go positive, then some concerns that we saw throughout Saturday, and then end on a positive note as well. So let's just start with the first positive, and that was the first half performance by Coach Woodley and his squad. I mean, that was a game in week 3. Drake was down 28-7 at halftime and was getting just torched. They had allowed like over 7 plays of 20-plus yards in week 3. That was not the case on Saturday. That was not the case whatsoever. And I put out a tweet saying, man, these are definitely not the same teams that faced off in September, especially for Drake. Drake gets the ball and scores on their first drive, puts up 3 points. They just were able to take punches and deliver punches in that first half. I mean, one of our biggest keys to Drake's success on Friday's show that previewed this FCS playoff first round was talking about Drake's offense needing to be balanced. Easier said than done. We mentioned with all of those keys, it was easier said than done. But Kyle Kemp put together a fantastic plan. I mean, even when Nick Herman gets banged up and had to be out a couple of drives, they were able to balance out, the use of Logan Inagawa's legs as well as his arm talent. Jackson both had a great game. They were utilizing tight ends. They were getting Taj Hughes involved. They were moving the ball pretty efficiently down the field. He had Inagawa in the first half with 59 passing yards, which isn't a lot, but when you look at what he had done the previous 2 games compared to that, it felt like a huge win, because the 59 passing yards in the first half against South Dakota was matching the entire game total that he had against Dayton, and it was more than what he had in the win against Morehead State. So the defense, on the other hand, continued to be so dominant and kind of the identity of this Drake team because of guys like Sean Allison, J.R. Flood, Nick Mangialardi. This defense was really special this year, and under first-year defensive coordinator Adam Cox, I mean, they put together a great plan in that first half. We mentioned how in week 3, Drake allowed over 7 plays of 20-plus yards. In the first half, the defense only allowed 2 plays of 20-plus yards. the defense was tackling LJ Phillips, who's one of the best FCS running backs in the country. They were tackling him in open field. I mean, they were having secondary guys tackle him in the open field, just fundamental tackles. You were having Sean Allison not needing to be the main guy. I mean, J.R. Flood was getting involved a lot in that first half. The announcers even talked about how, man, we haven't said Sean Allison's name quite a bit. And that could have been part and due to South Dakota's game plan, but I really think it was just Drake's defense. Everyone in that first half was just eyeing in and buying into the strategy and really performing to a top tier level. And that first half was wonderful. Drake only down 17-10 at the half. Their only issues were third downs, which still reared their head, but also, more importantly, were in that first half just self-inflicted wounds, where they had, I think, 5 penalties in that first quarter, and 4 of them were false starts. And it was at bad times where they would get in the red zone on that first drive and then just stalled out at the 25 because they couldn't run the ball with Nick Herman being out for a couple of drives. And they also just continued to have those issues on those pre-snap penalties. But overall, the first half, very positive. You were leaving, going into halftime, sitting there going, Coach Woodley may have found something. This may be the first time Drake gets through the first round of the FCS playoffs. Now time for the negative. Then South Dakota comes out in that second half and really demonstrates their athleticism, their versatility, and how they were just on a different level than Drake in that second half. South Dakota comes out of halftime, opening with a return that got them started at Drake's 30-yard line. And you're sitting there going, oh boy, here we go. They score on that drive. They would go on to score 21 straight points. Drake couldn't do anything to slow down their X factors. Aiden Bowman was pinpoint accuracy with his deep ball, with short routes, medium, anything you threw at that guy, he was going to be able to complete it. LJ Phillips turned it on in the second half. And then more importantly, Fenner. Fenner was unbelievable in that second half. 3 touchdowns on the game, all in the second half, 2 of them in the third quarter. And while in the first half, we're praising Drake's defense for not allowing those, over-the-top plays that just take off the ceiling of a defense, they did it in the second half. 5 plays of 20-plus yards in the second half. South Dakota in that third quarter came out on a mission, and it was apparent. 126 yards to Drake 72. And more penalties stacked up against Drake. Those third down issues continue to hurt the Bulldogs. They were 5 of 13 on the day. And it was just a brutal second half where Drake, they really just couldn't get anything going. And you're sitting back really seeing the difference in athleticism and then just the balance South Dakota had, where you have the best FCS running back in the country while also having one of the best wide receivers in the country as well in Fenner. There's not much a defense can do to compete against those two guys, and especially when your quarterback's heating up as well. Their X factors played great. They were balanced, and they could just take off the top of Drake's defense. I really thought, in that first half, Drake is slowing down South Dakota's game plan. But when you're rewatching it with, the knowledge of what happens, you more feel like South Dakota went away from their game plan, went away from their identity, went away from what they do best in that first half. And in that second half, they got a talking to in the halftime locker room and decided, what we do best is launch the ball. We have a crazy fast and athletic running back in LJ Phillips that can attack defenses at all levels. So I think they just went away from what they do best in the first half and proved it in the second half why they're one of the best teams in the FCS. So that's the negatives. Those were the concerns. Those were the headaches, the tough plays, the penalties, the third downs that continued to just rear their heads and hurt Drake here in this 38-17 loss. But despite losing in the first round of the FCS playoffs for the second consecutive year, and despite, having all that hope in the first half and getting kind of blown out in that second half, there is so much to be excited for in 2026 if you're a Drake Bulldog fan. Number one, yeah, you went 0-3 against FCS opponents, but they did not feel the same as they have in years prior. I mean, against South Dakota State, on the road at South Dakota State, who was the number 2 team in the country at that point, handled them. And to the point of they were with them every step of the way until that fourth quarter. They were handing out punches, dishing out punches, taking punches. And that was a game where you were without your starting quarterback. You lose your QB2 on the second drive of the game. So you have a true freshman starting at quarterback for the first time. And they performed greatly. And that was before Nick Herman jumps onto the scene. That was before they had an identity offensively. And you watch that first half against South Dakota, and you're sitting there going, this is not the Drake team of the past against FCS opponents. They make FCS opponents earn it. And they don't miss a single step in the regular season, winning the Pioneer Football League for the third straight year with a brand new coaching roster, with a brand new team. And the most important key as to why Drake fans should be really excited for 2026, all the main key players, all the main roles offensively, they're coming back because they were all filled by true freshmen and sophomores in 2025. Logan Inagawa, true freshman, really proved to be a starting quarterback in this league. Nick Herman, true freshman running back, unbelievable talent, and really kicked this Drake offense to a different gear once he started going in the second half of this season. And so there should be high expectations for this offense and Kyle Kent in 2026. On defense, you do lose a lot at linebacker with Sean Allison and J.R. Flood leaving. Those guys were the identity of that defense, were the vocal leaders of that defense. So that's going to be a key position Coach Woodley is going to have to rebuild going into 2026. You also lose another key vocal leader in Luke Woodson, who's just been with this program for so long and has been a great asset in that running back room. But despite those key losses, and with everything coming back in 2026, one of the biggest reasons you get excited is because everyone trusts Woodley and his staff. They go 8-4. They were right there in the first half against South Dakota. You know what this team can do, and they can do something pretty special in 2026. So I think everyone should be so excited, even after a 38-17 loss, when your season gets ended on the road against South Dakota. Those losses to FCS opponents did not feel the same. And Coach Woodley, I think we've said it now in every show in the last 3 weeks, that dude just knows how to win. It was awesome as a Drake Bulldog fan to see this team not take a step back whatsoever after winning 2 straight PFL titles. So that will end Drake's football season, 8-4 on the year. A lot to be excited about, but we'll get into that more on Wednesday as we have our final Wednesday with Woodley of 2025. And the plan is to keep it going in 2026. As long as he is here with the headset, we will have Coach Woodley on each and every Wednesday during the football season. but we'll have him on one last time to recap the season, recap the playoffs, and talk about the future for Drake on Wednesday's show. So now let's jump over to the basketball side of things, as it was Feast Week and Drake participated in the Emerald Coast Classic, where they had to take on LSU and then Georgia Tech. 2 games in 2 days. Bulldogs go 1-1, get third place in the Emerald Coast Classic. And they fell to LSU on Friday night, 71-62. But they bounced back with a really dominant offensive performance against Georgia Tech, where they went 84-72. Their biggest win in Coach Hendo's first year with Drake as of this point. And we'll get into more of that here in a little bit. But want to start with Friday night's game, the loss to LSU. Just a few thoughts in the 71-62 loss. First and foremost, it's a loss you live with. I mean, LSU undefeated. They go on to win both games, just destroyed DePaul in the championship. They're high up on KenPom. They're a team that missed out on the NCAA tournament a year ago, despite all those SEC squads getting in last season. But they are a team, they're on a mission to get back to the NCAA tournament, and they're an NCAA tournament type team. They have the strength in the paint. They have great guard play, some really versatile guards that can pop it from deep, but also don't have the fear to get in deep into the paint as well. And so that's just first and foremost. That's a loss you can live with. The first half was very concerning for Drake, but the way they performed in the second half and losing by 9, that's a loss you go, I'm okay with that. I think I even told people, if Drake makes it entertaining and keeps it close where they look like they could compete with these Power 4 conference teams, then absolutely I'm fine with a 10-point loss, because that's an undefeated LSU team we're talking about. But so Drake loses by 9, and to start, the most concerning thing was that first half, where again, another slow start just absolutely hurts the Bulldogs, where Coach Henderson's squad digs themselves too deep in a hole early on to really make a comeback, despite having a great second half. They start off 0 of 7, which I didn't have any issues with the shots they were taking. There was just a lid on the rim, and it just became the defining factor of this game, where Drake got off to an 0 of 7 start while LSU couldn't miss. LSU was marching down the court. Secondly, we've been talking all season of what are the X factors for this Drake team. We had talked about, maybe it's Applehans coming off the bench. Maybe he's the X factor. When he plays well, this Drake team wins. I think the 2 X factors, and this kind of goes across the board, it's nothing crazy when you're talking about college basketball and basketball in general. It's kind of like saying, if you win the line of scrimmage every game, you're going to win a lot of football games. But for Drake, it is real apparent. If they struggle in one of these categories, it is really hard for them to put together a victory. And they lost both against LSU in the paint, where they allowed 40 points in the paint alone against LSU, and then lost the rebound battle. If they struggle in each of those 2 categories, this you notice a huge difference. If they can win one of those, they can compete with anyone. I mean, it was proven on Saturday. But those are just becoming the most important factors. Those slow starts where they dig themselves deep into a hole, and then just winning those rebound and paint categories. And to be honest, they started 0 of 7. I didn't hate any of those shots, just a lid on the rim. And they led at one point in the first half too. So those slow starts, you just see how important they are, because, man, if Drake is able to make just a handful of those first 7 shots, then they are right there, blow for blow, with the Tigers. But the slow start gets them in the end. They lose game 1. But Saturday, what a bounce back performance. They win in just dominant offensive fashion 84-72. And biggest win of the season in terms of rankings. Going into Saturday, Georgia Tech ranked 121st in KenPom. So that was huge for this Drake team to see them perform against an ACC opponent like that. But the biggest thing I loved was we just got done talking about LSU and how those slow starts and, man, first half looked like a completely different team in the second half, where Drake won the half and was so much more aggressive offensively. Against Georgia Tech, they played, I think, this season, their most balanced and complete offensive 40 minutes we've seen. I mean, even against Simpson, even against Buena Vista, we saw them struggle in the first 8 minutes. I mean, against Buena Vista, they didn't lead until 12 minutes into the game. But against Georgia Tech, that wasn't the case. Georgia Tech, Drake shot 50% for the whole game, really dominated in moving the ball, looked efficient from all over the court, where they were driving to the rack well. You had Jason Thomas playing well. You had Quinn, who we'll get to in a little bit, with an amazing weekend in the Emerald Coast Classic. But just first and foremost, I was most pleased with just them playing a complete 40 minutes for, I think, the first time we've seen this season. Second thing I want to jump into is, man, Coach Henderson, if there's anything I've learned about his coaching style and what he's really talented and gifted at with this Drake squad in his first year, it is his ability to make adjustments. I mean, against LSU, they win the second half, and their offense looks so much smoother in that second half against LSU. Against Georgia Tech, that first half, I mean, teams were going back and forth. It was an awesome game. But Georgia Tech was dominating Drake from behind the arc. They were 6 of 9 in the first, and it was clear Drake was struggling to get through those picks and screens the Yellow Jackets were setting, because they were getting open shots on those pick and pop threes. And that's why they went 6 of 9. In the second half, that was not allowed. And you saw it in the box score, where the Yellow Jackets finished the day 9 of 22 from behind the arc. And that's coaching adjustments right there. That is clearly Henderson sitting down at halftime and drawing up a great second half game plan to make sure the Yellow Jackets aren't getting those open looks, that Drake is able to fight through those pick and pop threes. So that was what stood out for me on the coaching side of things. But let's jump into the players that stood out. First and foremost, Jalen Quinn had the weekend I think we've all been waiting for. And just we saw him hit the floor in game 1, where you're sitting there going, his length, his build, and the way he's able to shoot the ball and the way he's able to drive the ball, more importantly, this guy could be a huge factor in the Missouri Valley. And I think for the first time this season, we saw him put together 2 very dominant games. 20-plus points in both games. He had a career-high 31 against Georgia Tech, ended the weekend with 51 points on 17 of 29 shooting. I mean, he was just incredible. He didn't turn over the ball a lot. And the only downside, and I'm not a guy to blame refs, but against LSU, those last 2 fouls he got to foul out were very questionable in my eyes. But he could have had more points against LSU and could have been a huge factor in closing in on that lead the Tigers had. But he fouls out against LSU and still had a dominant performance. So really impressed with Jalen Quinn. That was the weekend we've been waiting for from Quinn since he transferred here from Loyola. Secondly, I want to jump into Federico, who had a decent game against LSU. I mean, their size could really compete with his size. Against Georgia Tech, he dominated. 20 points from him against the Yellow Jackets. Didn't miss a shot, I don't believe, in that first half. And he was showing off his versatility, the way he was able to attack the paint, the way he was able to pass the ball, dominate the glass, and then, most importantly, the way he was able to stretch the floor for Drake. That's been a thing we have talked about with this team and been excited about with this team since the Drake Hoops Fest, where we're talking with Coach Henderson, and he's like, I can't wait for Drake fans to see our versatility offensively and the size we have. Federico's 6'9", wingspan of like 20 feet, it feels like, and he can pop that ball. And if he gets more confident and comfortable, and if Henderson and his coaching staff start drawing up some more key plays to get him behind the arc, he can become a real offensive factor. And he's already a big one now, but man, he could be lights out. Really impressive. So dominant performance by Federico, and a player I wasn't expecting to talk about as much, but really impressed, I think, myself and a lot of Drake fans over the weekend, was true freshman and Griffin Goodberry. Griffin Goodberry, 10 points, 22 minutes against LSU, and he's a guy where he can stretch the floor. Needs to just get a little stronger in a few aspects, like has moments where you sit there and go, oh, yep, that's just a freshman mistake. That's just a freshman going up against an LSU dominant front court where, sometimes he's not as strong going up to his shot, or sometimes, he second guesses himself after he misses a couple of threes, where it's like, dude, you have the talent. You can shoot it. If I'm Coach Henderson, I'm giving Goodberry the green light. Because if he can start building up that confidence shooting the ball, let it go. And think about what that could do for this offense. If you can just stretch out that paint with the guards that like to drive, Exact's a drive first guy. Thomas, drive first. And also Jalen Quinn, a huge drive first guy. So you need those Federicos, the Goodberries, to be able to stretch the floor a little more for this Drake offense to have success. And I just thought Goodberry performed great all weekend long. His box score didn't look as, sexy as it did against LSU versus Georgia Tech, but still did a lot of great things where Drake fans should be excited about him in the future. But to finish up with this Drake basketball talk about being excited for the future. Thanksgiving's over. And that means one thing and one thing only. Owen Larson's supposed to be back. We've been told for 2 months now that the plan is for Owen Larson to be back post-Thanksgiving. So any day now, Owen Larson should be back with this team. And I'm really excited and eager to see what he does to this Drake offense and what he adds to this Drake offense that's already starting to gel together, starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm that we've been wanting to see. So if you get him out there, what is that going to open up for Jalen Quinn, Jayshawn Thomas, Federico, Exact, all those guys? What is it going to do? I'm really excited to see just how he's able to improve this offense. So Drake now will take a couple of days off before they get back home to play Western Illinois on Tuesday at 6:30, and then UAB on Friday. Both games at the Knapp Center, so hopefully you guys will be able to pack it, make it loud, and hopefully we'll see Owen Larson back in one of those games, if not both. All right, to finish up, we're going to finish up today's show talking a little bit about college basketball on a national scale. It was Feast Week. I mean, one of the best weeks of college basketball. You had Iowa State going up against St. John's, Michigan, Gonzaga. You had Duke, Arkansas on Thanksgiving, which was an awesome game. Awesome game. Just so many great college basketball games during Feast Week. It really does rival that March feeling. But I want to go through my top 3 most exciting teams that I was impressed with during Feast Week. And to lead it off, the team I was most impressed with that I don't think any other team last week can rival is Michigan. Michigan goes 3-0 over the week. They beat 12th ranked Gonzaga, 21st ranked Auburn, and also San Diego State, all by 40 points. Just absolute dominance. They could have the best front court duo in the country in Lendenberg and Johnson. Those two are combining for 30 plus points per game, and their defense is what's impressing me. Against Gonzaga, I love Ike. I think he's a very talented player for Gonzaga. He was held to 1 point, 0 of 9 shooting. They just frustrated him. They made him uncomfortable all game long, and you can just expect more of that from that duo. They've been incredible. And I don't think there's a single team from last week that rivals their 3-game performance than Michigan. So they're clearly my number 1 team. Number 2, sticking with the Big Ten and sticking in the same state, Tom Izzo and Michigan State dominated number 16 UNC. I think Fears Jr. could be the best young guard in the country. Puts out 19 points on 8 of 10 shooting, 7 assists, and the whole starting lineup for Tom Izzo's group is legit. You have great front court players that can stretch the floor, can shoot from anywhere, but can also be dominant in the paint. You have great guard play. And to be honest, I think Michigan State might be the most well-gelled group in the country to this point in the year. I mean, it's early on in the season. You have still, freshmen figuring things out. You have coaches figuring things out with their teams. Not with Tom Izzo. So Michigan State, they're my second most exciting team from Feast Week. And then to wrap it up, number 3, we have the 4th-ranked Duke Blue Devils. 80-71 win versus 22 Arkansas. Let's start with Cam Boozer, who we knew is going to be a top 5 basketball player in the country. But I think against Arkansas in Chicago, that was the most complete game we've seen from Cam Boozer all season long, where he's had great performances. He's been great almost every game. Against Kansas, though, he started off like 1 of 10, 1 of 11, and you've just seen that where it takes him a while to get started. Against Arkansas, not the case. Finishes 35 points, 13 of 18, efficient, dominant, whatever you want to call it. He was incredible. But what impressed me most about Duke was their defense. No easy shots against Duke. The way they communicate, you have guys moving all over the court. They're able to really adjust defensively on the fly really well, and they're just able to make things uncomfortable for all offenses. So their defense is legit. So my top 3 most exciting, most impressive Feast Week teams, it goes Michigan, Michigan State, and Duke. So that will do it for our show, though, today. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, comment, rate, all that good stuff at Media Row Pod. And then go and check out Kelly's Little Nipper. We thank them for their support, and we thank you for tuning in each and every week to the Media Row Podcast. Make sure to tune in on Wednesday as we have our final Wednesday with Woodley, where we are going to recap everything from the playoffs, the season entirely, and then what you should be excited for in 2026. So that'll do it. Have a great Monday. We will see you on Wednesday for a brand new episode of the Media Row Podcast.